I left the UK almost 3 years ago, and since then, I've been able to build a location-independent, low-tax lifestyle that allows me to keep more of my income and stay off the HMRC radar. But it only works if you structure it properly. So in this video, I'll be showing you how to live a low-tax lifestyle, become a non-tax resident of the UK, whether you want to live in the UAE full-time or you want to travel to different countries. Now, leaving the UK isn't as simple as just getting on a plane, going into a new country and getting a new SIM card. The UK is one of the most aggressive tax systems in the world, and if you don't leave properly, you're going to risk becoming a tax resident of not only the new country you go to, but you're also going to be a tax resident of the UK, and you can end up being double taxed. Now, the first thing you need to understand is how the HMRC defines tax residency. And it all starts with what we call the SRT, which is the statutory residence test. Now, the SRT is a framework the HMRC uses with 3 different levels to determine whether or not you're still a tax resident even if you leave the UK. The first test is if you spent less than 16 days in the UK this year, but you're a tax resident in the past 3 years. So for example, if you spend 14 days with your family this Christmas, but you spend all the rest of the time overseas, you're automatically a non-tax resident. The next test is if you left the UK 3 years ago and haven't been a tax resident since, but you've came back for less than 45 days, automatically a non-tax resident. And the final automatic tax residency test is if you work a full-time job abroad, but you spent less than 91 days in the UK and less than 30 days working in the UK. And as long as you pass all these tests, you're automatically a non-tax resident of the UK. But if you don't, that brings me to the next round of tests, which is the automatic UK residency. The first test is pretty obvious, and that's the 183-day rule, which means if you tally more than 183 days in this tax year, automatically a tax resident. That means even if you spend 3 months in the UK, then you go back to another country, and then you come back for another 3 months, and then another few extra days, again, you are automatically a tax resident. The next test is a bit more of a gray zone. So if your only home is in the UK, whether you bought property or you're renting, you have a long-term lease, and you can't provide substantial evidence that you have another home elsewhere, even if you have an Airbnb in another country, again, you're automatically a tax resident. So my advice to you is to make sure you have concrete evidence that you have a home elsewhere, a place of abode elsewhere outside of the UK. And the third test is if you have a permanent work contract that lasts more than 35 hours per week. So even if you're a consultant, if you're employed with the UK, you've got a 12-month contract and you're constantly flying in and out of the UK, you're an automatic tax resident, even if you spend less than 183 days in the UK. But we're not done, because if you don't pass any of these tests, the HMRC has a next round of tests, which is the sufficient ties test. And this is where you become a de facto tax resident. And there are 5 main ties that the HMRC can use to determine whether or not you're a tax resident in the UK based on the ties that you still have. The first tie is the family tie. Do you have a spouse, partner, or children under the age of 18? The next tie is the accommodation tie. Do you have a home available to you for more than 91 days per year? So what this means is if you live outside of the UK, but then maybe you go back to your parents' house and your parents have a home for you to live for more than 91 days, that still counts as a home available to you. The next tie is a work tie. Do you work more than 40 days in the UK? Then the 90-day tie. Did you spend more than 90 days in the UK for the previous 2 tax years? And then finally, the country tie. Do you spend more time in the UK more than anywhere else? Now, here's how it works. The more ties that you have, the fewer days are allowed in the UK. So for example, if you have 4 ties, you only get 15 days. If you have 3 ties, it's 45 days. You have 2 ties, you get 90 days. And if you have 1 tie, you get 120 days. So even if you're not living in the UK full time, but you still have ties there, you're visiting family, you're maintaining property, you work there, you have an employment contract, you need to work on reducing as many ties as possible, or you're going to risk getting dragged back into the UK tax system. and become a de facto tax resident. So you can still visit the UK. I'm not saying you need to relinquish your passport or citizenship, but you need to just work on reducing as many ties as possible over time. Like, you can relocate your family to another country. You can take your children out of the UK schooling system and bring them into the UAE in Dubai. You can homeschool your children if you have the money to do that. You can sell your property. Now, I know there is an exit tax on property if you sell your property in the UK, and even if you leave the UK and you haven't sold your property, they can still try and tax you for that. So whether you sell your property or not, it doesn't make a difference, but just don't go out and start buying new property. I think it's pretty much common sense. Okay, so once you've cut ties to the UK tax system, that means you need to move into a new tax system. There's no such thing as paying or not being a tax resident for any country. You obviously need to move your assets, move your business, move your family to a new country. Now, the best and easiest thing to do is to move your assets, move your company to the UAE. Now, the UAE makes it really fast, really simple to set up a company. It has a 0% income tax and a 9% corporation tax. Now, there is a way to get your tax down to as low as 0%. You can qualify for the tax relief program if your gross revenue, not profit, is less than $800,000 per year. So if you're making less than $800,000 a year, you can actually qualify for the tax relief program, but this is only going to last until 2027. So if you want to get in on it, you want to do so really quickly. But if you're making more than $800,000 a year, 9% is still better than paying half of your money to the government every single year. So I'd rather pay the 9% than pay 40, 45%, sometimes even more if you're going into Europe for an economy that I don't truly believe in. Now, when you move your company to the UAE, specifically Dubai, you can open up a free zone company or a mainland company. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions about moving to Dubai doesn't mean you have to base your life around there for the whole year. You can still set up a company in Dubai and reduce your taxes without staying there the whole year round. Now, in the UAE, there are two types of visas. There's the standard visa and there's the golden visa. Now, the standard residence visa allows you to maintain a company there, reduce your taxes without being there the whole year round, as long as you visit once every 180 days. So you can't just disappear into the ether and just pay no taxes. It doesn't work that way. You still have to maintain some ties to the UAE. Now, you're not going to get a tax certificate, which may be important if the UK tries to tax you whilst you've already moved to the UAE. So if you want a tax residency certificate, you do need to stay in the UAE for at least 90 days. But if you're living in another country, maybe you're going to Southeast Asia like Thailand, you're going to South America, or you're going to Africa, and you want to base your life there, you don't necessarily need to have a tax residency certificate. You can live in your favorite country or countries if you want to base between two of them, and you just need to visit once every 180 days, and there you go. You can qualify for your 0% income tax or 9% corporation tax. So the standard visa runs on a 2-year cycle. So every 2 years, you need to go back and redo the process again, right? And there is a company renewal fee as well. So you need to be aware of these things. If you're moving to Dubai, you're going to get an Emirates ID. You're going to have to have your banking there. You need to make sure you're renewing your company every year, and you need to renew your residency visa every 2 years. Now, if you like my one-on-one help into reducing your taxes to as low as 0%, whether it's through a golden visa or a standard visa, and you want to set up a company in Dubai because you're sick and tired paying almost half of your income every year to an economy that's going downhill, then book in a call with my team at Remote Sovereignty below. We have boots on the ground support with people in the UAE who can guide you through the entire process, getting your Emirates ID, doing your biometrics, setting up the company, your banking, and making sure you have a smooth and soft landing. So if you're interested, book in a call, the first link in the description below. As always, it's Nathan, and I'll see you in the next video.